Hey, 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 Laura J here with Rosemary, who is the artist that created the amazing soul portrait that I have in my space now. And the second you actually created last night on December 31st, which will be the cover art for my podcast that is actually our podcast from the perspective that we're all contributing and we're all weaving the intentional inner webs that it is named after. So, Weaving Intentional Inner Webs podcast is going to begin in the next couple weeks, and Rose and I are going to be a big piece of that because Rose has created a Symphony of Souls canvas of portraits that she creates blocks for different souls that connect with her that want to be part of the bigger picture. And with Peaceful Inner Warriors United, I thought it would be phenomenal if enough of us could actually commission Rose to create soul portraits where we can all have our own holes within the holy sea that we do see, except for it's not with a HOLY, it's the WHOLLY for the holy of the whole E for the energy that we redirect into the tapestry of life that we're weaving together. Rose?
Yes, and it's like you said, Holy C. Well, in the chord of C, because it's music, right? So it is. It's very much connecting all. It's more like a mosaic. It's connecting and see how the common threads between us all are actually connecting us, all of us together. And a lot of it is done through music. So again, a person's playlist. I will channel through their soul through their playlist, their music playlist, and even somebody's asked, even if you have similar songs or same songs on a playlist, you still get a different painting because for that person that it resonates for a different reason, a different emotion, energy, motion. So creating it is a great thing to do and a big endeavor, but I love doing that to show people themselves, the light inside of themselves and see so they can see it for themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
See how they connect with the ones next to them. And I have 7 of these huge like canvas sheets, 9 by 12 feet, 7 chakras. So the 7 human body that makes up the humanity itself and how it connects together.
All the hues of the color spectrum to create the whole availability of options for the creator to draw from as the artist that uses the canvas of life.
Yes. And it's funny because there will be light eventually underneath the canvas on the background for each one to shine through. There'll be lights underneath. But yes, it is more about how, as we, as a whole, as you're talking about whole, as humanity, we create the collective consciousness, the human body, even in a way, but the God source body, because we are all connected through that common thread of coming from the same Big Bang, the same, we bleed the same blood, all of this. We have that inner divine spark in us, and we are just different perspectives living out that divine spark. We're different universes of it, different flavors of it, living it out so that we can know more about each other, more know about us, right? And us as divine beings. So this is in a way to show that mosaic of who we are, at least in a given time. It doesn't have to be, it's just at the now, right? Because we are all also changing and growing at the same time. We're not limited. It'd be
No,
awesome.
the only limits are the limits that we put on our perspective of possibility and potential.
Correct. And that would probably bring it into, like we were saying, a judgment. Therefore, if we're judging ourselves because we're literally telling somebody this is what we think of somebody else, but it's really showing us how we think about ourselves because we're looking at it going, well, this has something that I don't, and saying that we're in lack. And so to project that out onto somebody and judge them for that is literally telling us that, well, we don't have it, so therefore we must pull somebody else down who does, or judge how they got it or where they got from without knowing the whole story, their story, which is again their soul story.
Yeah, you never know what somebody has gone through until you've walked a mile in their shoes. truly. So, yeah, it's the behind the scenes that Rose sees when she paints the energies of the music that you offer for the soul reading that she then creates the artwork for. And today we were, before some drama on my part that was brought in because of a video that I shared that got a lot of complaints from people that didn't like what was said or shared in terms of cats on tables. And so there, that is literally what I am dealing with on the first day of this new year. And I shared it with Rose because before I was informed of this issue socially that had come up or erupted after a display of play that was not taken that way, she had said about judgment and it being part of the major arcana that the first video we did together was around the major arcana and the evolution of the character arcs through it, which is really where we're starting at the beginning of this year. Anyway, so getting back to judgment and getting back to all of those stages that we're moving through as we become who and whose we always were, and actually learn to step into the capstone that no longer has to hit us on the head when it comes down on us if we're in it. If we're on it, if we are actually riding the wave, we don't get hit by the wave, right?
Yes, and actually, if you look at the capstone, which some to again is referred to as enlightenment, it's not a three-dimensional object. It literally looks flat because it is something that is outside of this dimensional 3D-ness, this material that we're in. We're talking about the inner soul, then the I in the third eye. So it's not something that would be subjected to something that is material in the material world. It wouldn't be hit by a wave. It wouldn't be hit by an emotional energy wave. We could feel energy, but when we take a projection into ourself in our core, that therefore becomes our core of that energy, right? It even brings you to the, what is the eye? The eye of Sauron, where it was very fiery and looking at everything, right? It's just one aspect of an eye, an identity, somebody that gained power and fed on power in that moment instead of becoming pure, in which case that eye would have not been fiery and controlling and destructive. The identity, the ego eye.
And the ego eye is really the emotion go, I say. That is how we say go away to the uncomfortable things we then press down in convenient ways for the moment, except we forget that now is all we ever have to deal with all of it. So when a small trigger shows up and we buried a lot of related content before that then pops up, it's like this huge eruption of a helium balloon we tried to hold underwater, except for boom, then we find we're in an issue.
Yeah. And then again, even the ego itself, like I said, we talked about entities or what we would see as shadows on a person. So an ego, when it's swelled, creates a shadow because it's something that you lie to yourself to in order to gain power or attachment or any of that sort. And so it grows. It looks like a possession of a person because your ego possesses you then. It's always in control. As opposed to when, again, when you're projecting that ego out and somebody takes that as truth into their core, they look like they have a parasitic attachment. And I believe we talked about parasites today as well.
Yeah.
So exactly. They don't see eye to eye anymore. Now they see two eyes instead of eye to eye. So they're parasites.
Right. So we're neutral instead of the energetic
Hmm.
when there are parasites that are creating multiple sites for the same belief system to be grounded because we become the hosts for the gnosis of the ghosts that are the corporate entities in disguise using logos brands and other convenient familiar packaging that give us a dopamine hit to rush our system from within. that make us say, oh, this sin is good for us. But the sin of syntax is meaning applied to things that are poison. But then culturally, we say, choose your poison. And then that becomes a fun way to play with the devil who lived backwards.
Correct. And then that again, it creates the temptations that we see, or the seven deadly sins, which would be the inverse of the seven chakras being healed and cleared. That is the seven inverse. And they say deadly because once you feed that wolf, which you talked about before, then you're feeding something that is deadly, that is bringing about the death of the flesh, right? The temptation of the flesh. So again, you see pairs of eyes instead of one eye. You see the shadow eye and the light eye, and that is duality instead of sitting with one eye, which is unity, which is not a yin and yang, it is a yin yang. So you see one, then you see a whole, you see the whole sphere for what it is then. And you can go in between each one without actually being each one and staying in each one. So we see the perspectives, we understand them, we understand them. And once we see it and we can feel it, then we can heal it. We cannot allow it to be just our one piece of the story or pie piece where we're sitting in. The color purple is the only one that we have, and it's the only one that's true. And yet there's a whole spectrum of other colors that are next to it, and every myriad in between, which are still true because it goes back to the core prism or prison, depending on how you see it.
Yeah, which reminds me of the Emerald City that I read the chapter of in The Wizard of Oz. I posted yesterday. So you can go back and check that out on the Peaceful Inner Warriors United page on YouTube. It's the newest channel, so it is a slow build, but it will be a fast one if more of us subscribe and then choose what we're going to scribe as individuals within a collective that need to be aware of what the other threads on the map of consciousness are doing, but also see that we are the ones that came here to ultimately tease those webs so that they ultimately get to face some of the energy and motion they pushed down before, so they get a chance to actually resolve it. Because if we don't, I had this conversation, it's a triggering one that just changed time in this moment from 2-2 to 2-3. So here we go in terms of the maid service and my perspective on the 5-dimensional chess game experience we're having within a multiverse, which is the whole notion of parallel timelines within a multi-dimensional layer cake of now, all happening simultaneously, even though linearly the time would say it's this way. It's actually all happening now, except for our time stamps take us into a spectrum that we're then on a range for, which is a ranger, that you're then on the range grazing as the cattle, or the ones that are deemed to be property and profitable because we're incorporated within the corporeal body. And we don't need to do that if we know how to actually use the capstone and not confuse it with the Pac-Man that's coming for all of us.
Exactly. Again, and are you the whole cake? Do you see the whole cake, or are you just residing in a layer of it? So, and which layer? And which are you able to and actually traverse to different layers? Because some of us are only stuck in a layer. Some are only stuck in a layer. Some are only to see the frosting or the layer of the cake itself, right? And then some of us bake the cake.
Yeah, well, we don't want to get cooked in the process. Another piece of that pie. But one thing that I do want to go back to where the maid service is concerned, and thinking about it in terms of where we are within this multidimensional layer cake of now, what if the multiple boards are actually the relationships we have with other characters in each of those worlds or realms or timelines or stories that we are interacting with through the identities that we have within those worlds or realms? And so, with that in mind, then, what if we actually saw that the maid service is a great way for us to take ourselves out of this experience early? because we're in pain, because we don't know how to deal with something, because we don't have anything to look forward to, because we're losing control, because the prognosis of aging hasn't looked good necessarily, and so many variables as to why leaving in a dignified way through the MAID service, medical assistance in dying, could actually be beneficial. While it is promoted through propaganda that profits the system that consumes the soul that leaves early, what we're left with are the multiple time boards where the soul that was grounding a certain frequency is no longer in each of these realities multidimensionally in order to ground those frequencies, which means the others on those boards suffer when that one removes themselves because of their reasons.
Yes, it would be the equivalent of as if we play a symphony and somebody leaves the flute out. The harmony is not there anymore. It needs to be rewritten again, right? And those that suffer is the entire symphony at that part will sound out of tune. They're not in tune then anymore. So the universe does make a way for that to be replaced. But again, if that soul is supposed to, and by free will, because free will that we have, an FW, free will, can also be a firewall. It can be something that firewalls us from reaching another level or another dimensional layer. It can also free our will, but it's how the framework, another FW, of reality works and what you're describing. So, and to be honest, you're bringing me back to, again, Maid Service, the film Soylent Green, which has been something that's been coming up quite frequently lately. Soylent Green in the film is that there were too many people overpopulated, and they literally had places that were basically kill zones for people to retire to, that they would actually go to get assistance in dying or passing over, and then they would use their bodies to make food for people to feed the rest of the masses.
Ugh.
So yeah.
That's right in line with the organ harvesting fact that Canada has become one of the greater global contributors of organs from clients that have taken an early exit through the MAID service, which is insane. So, when we step back into sanity, we actually see the insane nature of artistry generally. So, with what Rose was going to do on this call, but will be doing in the first few days of this new year, is actually painting the song Golden Hour. And I propose she call the portrait Our Golden Hour.
Yes.
So, Rose, if you want to speak into how you do that, I would love for people to get an idea of how you use the tools that you've got in order to do what you do so that you can accrue those who wish to commission you to do one of the soul portraits on the tapestry of us all.
Well, I'm going to use your painting for example, because it's a very good example of it. So a lot of your music, which I believe Golden Hour was on your playlist, um, there's a lot of music on there that when I'm listening to the music, and what I do is I tap into your energy, your signature, your soul signature, your frequency. Again, the frequency of which you're on every bandwidth, what we just discussed. And what I get is actually memories back, but they play through me as emotions. So whatever you've experienced in those points of your memories, I actually feel that through me. So there's times I said I've even cried into the painting process. But what it does is it also allows me to expand that into future potentials. Even how you're connected to other worldly things as well, other things that may happen in our 3D space or our 3D world stage that we're on, because we're all connected in some fractal form. Now it's funny, golden hour, because it makes me think of golden ratio. And the golden ratio is the Fibonacci spiral anyway, which is also a part of what we're painting. I painted the other night. But as I channel, I feel them go through, the music goes through each chakra, which creates a color. Each chakra is associated with a color, right? So that color plays out, and I feel that. And what it does, it creates a moving picture, a multiverse moving picture, right? And so that moving picture is then I'm painting in layers. I will do one layer, another, because I'm taking the time, the frame shot of each layer. and putting it on top of each other like the cake we're building so that you can see in multidimensional layers. Even your painting, if you take it and used a blue LED light or a pink one or a UV light, you will see something different in that because of the color spectrums that are on there. So when I do yours, like I said, I got memories. I have memories of emotional things that you were going through, whether you were listening to the song or at the time. And I will get snapshots of that moment and the joy that you felt, whatever angst you were going through, and it will end up in that painting. It shows you in an astral sense, your actual soul body, how it looks. So all of that is portrayed in there for you. And the energy that when I do it, because I actually perform it and with my body, it goes through me, does create healing, and it's my entirety of the body. So I could sit here and do it and it would be limited because I'm just sitting here only getting this up. I'm not quite moving anything. You don't see anything below. Or if I stand, you actually watch me move my entire body in it. And it creates an energetic flow that is very healing from what I hear from other people as well. They can feel that energy. So just part of what I do.
Amazing what you do, and I'm grateful to know you and to be able to share you with those who wish to be part of the tapestry that we have an opportunity to create together. And the tapestry that Rose is doing with the Peaceful Inner Warriors United group or assembly on Telegram, you can join, which is a great space for intense and in depth conversations to actually take place in a respectful way. These spaces and this canvas or quilt are ultimately contributing to the cover art for the album 24 project, where in July we'll launch another playlist, and Jared Wade out of the US is going to be helping to put together the music side of it. And if Janine Emily is so gracious as to host the playlist again, then we'll continue the way that we've done the first two. But ultimately, this next one is the one where we actually prioritized working with the artists to go in order to see the need to move those energies in motion that can be moved by someone else, to actually move it from in the soul into the painting that is an expression of the soul, so that energy gets trapped in a different aspect, or we actually move it within ourselves so that then it doesn't have to be like the still shot in our memory energetically, where it's like, oh, did you come back for me? Can I come now? Can I get back in? Like, ah, that's what our energy that we left in a not now moment is doing.
Mhm. Again, it's less of a trap and more of a freeing, because what it does is it shows you, and a lot of people don't see their own they don't see their light. It's one of the first things I said during a soul regression that I believe is on YouTube somewhere that I have. They don't see what is inside of them. And I remember when I was coming here as a child, as a baby, and in that reading, I was crying because I go, how can they not see the light in them? How do they not see that? Why are they sad? Why are they angry? Why are they irritated? Because the beauty is when you take all of that off, all of that stuff that creates a shadow, it's like a gassy entity on you, all the boxes and limitations off of you. And I actually just look at the purity of you, the purity of that you are here for a purpose. You have a purpose, and your purpose is defined by any way that you interact with somebody else, as you're talking about with the boards, the way you interact. It's defined in that moment. You may be on their board a pawn, even though you're not just a pawn on their board. And if they don't want to choose to see you any which other way, that's on them. But you know who you are in your core, because somewhere else you're a queen on the board, somewhere else you're a king on the board, right? So, but seeing the core of you, the beauty of you, this is a way for somebody to reflect and say, this is who you are. And not just in a given moment. You have so much potential that also recorded, I should say, in that painting. If you choose to step into that, that's your choice. And you can always change your mind. We have free will. Again, I'm just making sure that nobody firewalls themselves in doing so, right? We cut ourselves off from source the more that we dive into the 3D. We only look at the material as opposed to when we feel it. And then this changes the perspective, because now they can go back and listen to that music, that playlist, and then look at the painting and go, I get it now, right? You see it now, you feel it now. That is how we express and connect with our common threads now.
Yeah. So any artists that are interested in going on the journey inward, or I should say going on the inner journey, because there are no wards here. And so that's bringing in the spells of language, that if we can dispel the spells that the artists have been captured by, then we liberated artists are then able to create liberated works that liberate the masses who listen to those and stop doing the twerks and dating jerks, because that's what we were taught was what we wanted, when we could just be kinder to one another and follow a codex that we create and then live by, and are impeccable with our words, such as the four agreements that Don Miguel Ruiz writes of, and I referenced in my book, Fully Committed, The Sacred Sojourn of Now. So this is my work, and that right there is Rose's, and you're going to get to see 3 parts of the call we had last night, posted as soon as I am able to get space on my computer to make it possible. But life is full. And so we really have to be conscious of what we're filling our lives with. And I'm grateful that you chose to have this call with me, Rose, and to do this more regularly, to unpack all of these judgments and the labels and boxes and stigmas and ways that we have been told to step away from the truth of who we are in order to step into what someone else thought that we needed to, such as the shame or the fear or the guilt or all of the other ways projections make us play in the shadows that cover our light.
Yes. It's been awesome. It's an unboxing, an unveiling, lifting the veil.
Amen. Absolutely. And we did an unboxing day call as well on December 26th. So you can tune into that unboxing day call that already happened. The call last night was the call of and for a day of reckoning. And today we have this call to say our golden hour has begun getting painted.
Correct.
There are a lot of souls that are being stole right now in this psyop, the psychological operation, where people are given an easy out. John Maxwell is one of my early mentors as a coach, teacher, speaker, and it's his program that I have as a brand behind the certification as a coach, teacher, speaker I have. John often says, you pay up front and you get to enjoy the interest. You get to play with it. You get to enjoy that which is yours. You've earned it. Compared to play up front, you pay later. You pay the interest. You pay more because you didn't do it when you were supposed to. And I want you to think about that in terms of the MAID service now. I want you to see how, if this is a psychological operation, if this is spiritual warfare, if religions have divided us based on what we put our faith, what label we put our faith into. If energy, which is God, is all things, what is the all not? No thing. Things and all are not equal. One is more. All is most. All is all. There is nothing it is not. But when we fall, when our faith no longer stands with us to support us, that is when then the fear is able to keep us pressed down and make us think that we can't wear the crown of our own corona, which is when we actually are fully connected to the source of all. When it is running through us and we have faith that we can do it because we know that it is not just me you see. Yes, you see this, but behind me stand the 10,000 who came before me ancestrally that are in my DNA. The tribe of Dan in a different order, that's fucking me, man. Yes, you, man or woman, title of man, you be real.
That's what this is all about. We have to feel. Feelings are real. Feelings are interpretations of energy and motion that create stories that put us in our head when we're then out of our hearts. Remembering how to start recentering ourselves, reorienting ourselves, and realigning ourselves to the now is how we actually use the faith that we have that everything is working out for our greatest and highest good. Trusting in that is faithful, what it means to be faithful. This MAID service, if you take it, I want you to consider this from a psychological operation, from a spiritual warfare perspective. I want you to think about this, and I want you to share this perspective with anyone that has emotional dysfunctions that are creating disorders, dis-ease within the cellular body. I want you to make sure, please, before anyone signs anything. And if you know any nurses or doctors or any medical professional that is participating in the MAID service, I really would hope that you will share this with them, because this is so important and it's not being commonly talked about for a reason. We are here with a heart song. In us, we're meant to bring into life. No one can see our vision from within us until we bring it to life. We make it real. And then they say, oh, wow, thanks for the grand reveal. Oh, I'm just so glad you did it. Thank you. Because I didn't believe you could, but you did it and you proved me wrong and I'm glad for it. There's a lot of that in this reality, right? But if you have a heart song inside of your heart, do you want to be contributing to the wealth of the graveyard that is said to be the richest place? Because that is where so many unsung heart songs have been laid to rest with the body of the soul that came here to bring forward that which only that soul could. And when we don't, then we go into the afterlife knowing we didn't close the gap. The gap is where we will fall into if we come back into this reality and didn't, in fact, do that which we needed to now. Now is the only moment we ever have. You've never not been in a not now moment except for in your head. The head is a trap. The mental health system is designed to turn men and women into patients that are profitable for the corpse, that will orate rules to be applied to persons that are paid for per son or daughter. That's what your person is. It's not you. You don't get paid per you, per son. You are you. And you don't have to earn your way in this life. It is already paid for. We just have to claim the right and know how to do it. And that's what I've been learning to do. But if you don't do what you came here for, or I too, we will fall into a gap. In the next life, when we come back and didn't close it here, then we'll fall into it. And that'll be the trap then. Those who are assisting others in leaving this matrix, where Ma has been tricking because she thought she was telling the truth. She just got her BS belief systems wrong because she bought someone else's bull instead of actually feeling the resonance of truth within all and seeing what fits and feels and sits, and then deciding how she's going to use that. So the medical professionals that are helping souls leave this planet are actually creating soul ties. Those soul ties are going to create confusion in future lives, because now you're going to have a bunch of souls you have nothing to do with other than you killed them, just like a soldier. You took them out mercifully, good intentions, but good intentions pave the way to hell. So recognize that you, the medical professional who is helping people take a MAID service that would make them feel less than, you are accruing the karma on behalf of the corpse, because the corpse can't pay with flesh and blood. You can. That's why you work on its behalf, becoming half of it, the corpse that you orate for. Rules, mandates, edicts, telling people what they can do, who they can date, how they can feel, where they can go. You, who are doing any of the imposing of a corporation's orations, you're paying the karmic price. It's not nice, but I believe it's a fact. Or Is a fact a fictitious act? Is it useful to us to stay in a fiction or nonfiction where the universe doesn't differentiate negatives? So even a nonfiction, which was said to be truth or real, then becomes non-X'd out fiction, nonfiction, fiction. The focus is on the fiction. Well, let's change our diction and actually step into what it means to be real, what it means to feel, and by default, what it means to heal. Because when we feel without judgment, when we are able to offer ourselves self-acceptance and recognize those parts of ourselves we're calling back into the now, presence is the gift. It's why now is all we have, and each other. It's why we're not islands. It's why we're here together. We're meant to do it together. We are stronger together. So let's do this. And no longer have to weather these storms where only medical professionals who are paid to hear our problems can help us. Let's create community, common unity, where we see that we are all valuable. We have value. And pain is because before shame, guilt, denial, repressed something in us made us think it wasn't good enough. And we shoved that part of us out. So when it comes back, it's going to be coming back with all that. You're not going to be safe for it right away. And you got to be okay with that. So feel, love yourself, yourselves, the body, the temple. Temples, this is the temple our soul worships in every day. This is mine. You have your own version. I share mine with my man. That's it, right? We must be very careful who we share ourselves with, because the system only wants to feed off of us, and it's not real. It's powered by real men and women that then took on a title that made them not real either, where the conversion makes us a different version of the con when we play the game their way. I say, create instead. You don't need to take an early exit because you can't afford to live. We're finding the way to use the Commonwealth Trust, which is crazy. Look it up. I had to. And then you got to make your claims. And then there's the part of me that's like, ooh, you can't say all of this because then somebody's going to get you put down. Well, there's already a MAID service in this reality. And when I woke up, I saw my spot on the map of this world. I'm not a flat earther, not a round earther, not a hollow earther. I don't really care what shape the world is specifically. What I do care is the shape of the ones who are in it with me. And I do care about her. Mater, the mother of this material world, I do care about her. And we need to, because she is heart in a different order, which is why we've been shoved out of our heart and put soles on our shoes. So we walk on our soles and we stay in our head instead of our heart. And then we don't feel anything. And then we just start to follow orders, become easier to corral and command and control. I say be in charge. I don't need control. I realize I don't have control even when I think I do. So I'd rather be in charge of my own energy field, to be in charge of what I'm putting out and also what I'm letting in. If you are anywhere close to wanting to use the MAID service, please recognize the gnosis of the host, the ghost coming for you as an entity of a corporation, orating false promises. Please see how the gnosis is not in your best interest, because you are worthy, you are valued, and you matter Because if you leave before you close the gap, we're all going to fall into this trap because you didn't do what you came here for. That's not to blame, it's not to shame, and it's not to guilt you. It's to say you're going to take a trip. It's going to be a guilt trip or it's going to be a good trip, but you get to choose. And I would like for you to know how to move the energies in motion that need to actually be stimulated in order for you to embody more of who and whose you truly are. So I hope this message offers a different perspective on the MAID service that I wouldn't recommend. I went through an experience before, at the beginning of this whole PSYOP, this con video game drama that completely devastated and destroyed my self-image, my place in the family, my self-esteem. So much got destroyed January 2020. And it's something I don't talk about publicly. But what happened was I got to experience the MAID service someone wanted and couldn't get. So tried 4. And I believe it was because I had to go through the MAID service before it was available. Because at that time, I was okay with it. Because I felt like Jesus in the moment of seeing the suffering dog needing to be put out of their misery, and the dog chose, so I didn't stop the dog. And I was told I was supposed to have. And I would have, because I loved that dog more than anybody. I didn't know about the karmic implications of not stopping someone from leaving early. I believe karmically, the one that gave me the greatest lesson in betrayal, I believe that was contracted too. I'm grateful. Because I would not want to have thought the MAID service was a good thing when it came out at this time. And I may have, were it not for what I went through in order to open my eyes to be able to say, you are not alone. Medical professionals are not going to necessarily be your best bet if they are only able to help you to the limits of their professionalism. Empathy requires a sacred container. Not everyone is qualified. But with presence, we can hold that space and not try to fix one another, but simply let the energies in motion that need to move out, so they're not creating destruction inside anymore. Without a doubt, our entire world, reality, will change by making that shift and not blaming anyone for it. So that's my story. I wonder how many others have similar ones. We've all been through the ringer in our own ways. I just would like your soul to have the greatest chance at becoming more whole while you're here, rather than having to come back and start all over from scratch. Not scratched entirely, but that gap, I'd love for you to be able to close it. And whatever it takes to support one another to do so, that's the sacred container Peaceful Inner Warriors United are creating together.